What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to review the Elac BS41 bookshelf speaker. Now, before we get into things, I want to make a couple of things clear because this is a bit of a strange scenario. When this speaker first came out, it was mistakenly priced on Amazon for something like 60 bucks. A few reviewers bought them right away and gave them these raving reviews. Now, I'm not saying those reviewers did anything wrong. They didn't. But their reviews are based on a speaker that is much cheaper than how much these speakers actually sell for. Ever since the price was mistaken, it went up to around $160 and never went down. So these reviewers that gave this speaker a raving review, it was based on a speaker at less than half the price, right? Or more than half the price. How would you really say that? I don't know. Anyways, my point is this. If you see a raving review of the Elac BS41, make sure to pay attention to how much they were at the time that that review was made, right? Like I know Cheap Audio Man, for example, when he reviewed them, they were like 60, 70 bucks. So if he gave them a raving review, I mean, hell, at 60, 70 bucks, like, yeah, their performance is incredible, but I'm reviewing them at full price because they've been full price ever since they were mistakenly priced. And they were only like 60 bucks for a few days. Anyhow, seems kind of weird. I don't want to sit here and say Elac did it on purpose to get raving reviews. I don't know. That's a part of me wonders that, you know, that is kind of like an easy way to get some raving reviews. The price the thing at half by accident, you know, let the reviewers be like, holy crap, this is better than anything else at this price. Because look, at the $60, $70 price category, these would be competing with like the Mica MB42X, Dayton B652 Air. And yeah, this speaker's a lot better than those. Move it up to $160, what it's been selling for. Now it's got to compete with the Sony SSCS5, and that's a whole other ball game. So let's talk about it. I'm gonna throw the main specs on screen so you guys can check that out. I'm gonna tell you what the speakers sound like, tell you about some standout features, do some comparisons, then we're gonna wrap up the video. So, standout features. Around back, we have a nice flared port, which I think is worth mentioning. Most cheap speakers under $200 have crappy ports that are made out of like these kind of like heavy duty toilet paper looking rolls. And the Elac BS41 has a nice flared port. And I think that's worth mentioning. Thank you for that, Elac. Also, the cabinet construction does feel to be a little bit nicer than something like the Sony SSCS5. Aside from the other standout features, that's about it. It is a small speaker. It is an affordable speaker at something like $160, $170. So what does it sound like? Well, we got a top end that is problematic in just one way. It's been a long time since I've heard this out of a speaker, but the speaker wasn't very dynamic and the decay seemed to fall short, meaning when there was say a cymbal crash, for example, we all know a cymbal crash decays in the air for a little bit. Not on these. On the Elac BS41, a cymbal crash is like, it's over almost the minute it starts. I found this to be very peculiar. I didn't understand what was going on with that. It's just a characteristic of the speaker. The decay just isn't all that great. Also, in some instances, it felt like the treble was like a bit, I don't want to say muffled, but I guess a little tight, a little bit congested, not very effortless with its presentation, if you will. And I didn't love that very much. The speaker is fairly hard to drive, which is another thing worth mentioning. And I don't like seeing that at the budget price category because generally I like to recommend budget gear at the budget price category. A great budget amplifier with a built-in streamer like the Elac A50 is a great option for most affordable speakers. It's only $200. It's got, you know, not a lot of power, 25 watts a channel. That's generally enough for these speakers. It wouldn't get you very far on the hard to drive Elac BS41. So again, don't like that they're hard to drive. Let's talk about the mid-range. Mid-range is interesting, and mid-range is going to be polarizing on these speakers. It's really going to depend on what kind of music you listen to, because this is a bass-boosted speaker, and the bass does bleed up into the mid-range, thicken it up, and make it warm and juicy and things like that. The mid-range of the speaker, on one hand, can be described as like very pleasing, full-sounding male vocals, good amount of weight and body to guitar strings and other instruments, and a great sense of realism, really. But then on the other hand, when there was other tracks that needed a little bit more of an open, clean, and expansive sound in mid-range, the speaker just felt congested. So if you listen to EDM, for example, you might feel that the mid-range is closed off. But if you listen to like acoustic music, you might find the mid-range to be warm and rich. This was a scenario where I just think the mid-range is going to be polarizing. That's not a big deal. It's just worth mentioning. Moving down to the bass, this is a bass boosted speaker, meaning the bass is going to sound very full, shockingly so for the size, more so than most speakers in and around this price and size category. Being an affordable bass boosted speaker does mean the bass quality is going to be a little bit on the low side. It's not going to be the quickest, the most articulate. It's not going to have the best note to note distinction. It's not going to have any nuanced detail, but the quantity of the bass is going to be much higher than most other speakers in and around this price and size. So overall, from top to bottom, we got a speaker I think that some people are going to like if they listen to a certain type of music, and a speaker that I think other people are not going to love if they listen to other types of music. So polarizing, not a big deal. In a vacuum, I would say, like without A/B comparisons to other speakers, the Elac BS41 initially at first glance isn't a bad speaker. It sounds fine. You start A/Bing it to other speakers in and around this price point though, and it starts to not stack up, unfortunately. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, the Sony SSCS5. So those generally sell on average for about 150 bucks. The MSRP at 200, go on sale for as little as $100. So let's split the difference and call it a $150 speaker. The Elac BS41 is like a $160 speaker. The price kind of changes a couple dollars up and down. We'll call it 160 bucks. The two speakers are about the same price. Top end of the Sony is going to be a lot more effortless, a lot more open, a lot more air, sparkle, and separation with much better decay than the Elac. The mid-range of the Sony is going to be a lot more consistent with its presentation. It's going to sound great no matter what kind of music you listen to, where the mid-range of the Elac is going to be more polarizing. With some music, the mid-range of the Elac is going to sound better than the Sony. But with other kinds of music, the mid-range of the Sony is going to sound better than the Elac. So that's a coin flip. Let's move down to the bass. The Sony is while it is a small speaker, it has a bigger driver. The Elac's a 4-inch. The Sony, I think, is 5.12 inch. It's an odd size. Let's call it a 5-inch driver. It's got a bigger cabinet. So the Sony has a full sound also, but it's not very bass boosted. So I find the Sony to have a little bit less bass than the Elac, but its bass fidelity and quality is higher than the Elac, whereas the Elac gives you more bass quantity, but lower quality when compared to the Sony SSCS5. If it were up to me, I'd probably take the Sony SSCS5 over the Elac BS41. Let's talk about another comparison. Let's talk about the RSL CG3M. The RSL CG3M, like the Sony, is going to have a lot more openness, air, and clarity in the top end and treble region when compared to the Elac BS41. The RSL CG3M is also going to be a lot easier to drive than the Elac BS41. Mid-range, again, is going to be a similar affair. The mid-range of the Elac BS41 with some music is going to sound better than the RSL CG3M, but with other tracks, the RSL CG3M is going to sound more open, airy, and expansive in the mid-range. Moving down to the bass, the RSL CG3M is the smallest speaker in this price category. It does not have much bass at all. It rolls off at 90 hertz. The Elac BS41 does have more bass. So, which one would I take? I'd probably still take the RSL CG3M because I listen to a wide variety of music and I can count on it to give me more of a consistent experience over longer listening sessions. Whereas the Elac BS41, it's like if I listen to like acoustic music only or music with like a lot of like bassy instruments like guitars and things like that, or male vocals, like yeah, the Elac will sound better. But if I listen to like EDM on the next track, then that's where the Elac is going to sound all like tight and congested. So it's kind of annoying for me. But, look, if they're on your radar, I mean, feel free to check them out. I don't personally feel like they compete at this price category. That's just my opinion. I think the Sonys are better. I think the RSL CG3Ms are better. Look, are the Elac BS41s better than like super cheap stuff like the Mica MB42X or Dayton B652 Air? Yeah, but those speakers are under $100 a pair. So I don't know, man. I'm not sure the other reviewers who gave these great reviews at 60 bucks would have given them great reviews at the normal price. And again, that's not those reviewers' faults. There was no way for them to know the price was magically going to more than double, excuse me, a few days after their review goes live. It's a weird thing that happened. Anyhow, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to add to this review or any other comparisons. I am starting to lose my voice here. That does about wrap it up. I just want to clarify one thing. Some people might feel like I'm an Elac hater. I didn't give the debut 5.2 a very good review either. But I would like to remind everyone, I gave the DBR62 a raving review. I love the Elac DBR62. I'm not an Elac hater. They do make speakers that I like quite a bit. It's just these last two affordable ones, the Debut 5.2 and this BS41, I just felt like didn't compete in their price category. Hey, it's just my opinion. Anyhow, if you have any questions, this YouTube channel does have a free Discord. If I said anything about these speakers that bothers you or offends you, maybe you own these speakers and you came to this channel looking for some validation, I don't give a shit. My job is not to validate your purchase. Tell your therapist that shit. And until next time, guys, later.